people aren't going to run away from you if you don't adopt the latest AI vendor today. There are problems to be solved. You should do your diligence. You should stay close to the edge of what's possible, but you should not be too reactive to AI. You
Right.
should understand what's going on, identify the problems in your business, and then seek solutions to those problems.
All right. So Matt Spear, founder, propertymanagement.com. We have a very special guest today. We have Nitin Gupta from Mason, a very exciting company. Yeah. Have you been to New Orleans before? First time?
First time in New Orleans. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been fun.
same. Yeah. What's been your kind of takeaway so far? You guys been working hard, but like cool city.
It's really cool. I was walking around and our founding engineer, Michael, was like showing me the architecture. His father like played music in New Orleans before. And I was telling him, I was like, wait, this looks fake. Like all the architecture
Yeah.
looks like, it looks like it's from a movie. It looks like it's from Disneyland.
Yeah.
He's like, actually, no, like all of that stuff is based off of New Orleans. So it just kind of felt like a little bit of a movie walking around.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, it's like, and then the balance of you get the really good food, the music scene, and then just like kind of the occasional weird street smell or something. But it's like all kind of that like culture that I think defines New Orleans in a really cool way. So, have you been to a NARPM event before? I mean, you guys are pretty new.
Yeah, so this is our first time at Broker Owner. We've been to a couple events before this. The other largest event that we've been to was Nationals last year, but this is the first time. We've been to
Yeah,
two large NARPM events, and we're having a great time. I think the thing that we're trying to do while we're here is be just like really genuine to who
hmm
we are and like what we like to do. And I think people thought we were crazy for wanting to throw a 5K.
we didn't. We participated. You told me that idea, and I was like, dude, I don't know. I'll whatever we got to do to help. So that was really cool. What kind of I mean, we get right into like culture, right? You're like, no one else has done a 5K. I've never heard of that. And it just seems so natural. And how does that align kind of with your team and what you guys are trying to build?
Yeah, I mean, culture is just defined by the earliest people who are on our team. One of our teammates, he was a collegiate runner. He leads a run with our team every
Tucker,
Monday.
right?
Yeah, Tucker
Yeah.
Cargile. And he leads a run with our team every Monday evening, and we just love doing it. Actually, Mason is the name of our product and our company, but under Mason is actually a company, like an entity called Enduring Labs.
Okay.
And I'm like a big believer in endurance as like the number one indicator
Yeah.
of long-term success. It actually kind of comes from a hero of mine, this guy named Ernest Shackleton, which is a
Okay.
separate
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And so, this is like something that's just really near and dear to our hearts. And we just want to share ourselves with people. We want people to get to know us. We're going to get into this, but AI is this like kind of scary, nebulous thing. And behind every AI company is a group of people who are trying to solve problems.
Yes.
And I just want people to get to know the humans behind Mason.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool. I'm excited to dig into that. And I think that's a great point. And for those of you that weren't tracking there, so they did a 5K like right along the river. Is that the Mississippi River? Like I should know. I think
I
so.
do too.
Yeah, yeah. Right along the river, and it was just a really cool opportunity just to kind of do the hard thing in the morning, like get up. A lot of people were out the previous day. Get up, go for a run. So yeah, it was a really cool time. So, I guess maybe let's take a step back to how did you get here? Because I feel like most people when they grow up, they're not like, hey, I want to get into the property management industry. Now, technology, that's another story. Some people might say that, but how do you find yourself in this position in this industry?
Well, my family's always built hard businesses. My dad is an entrepreneur. He built businesses in manufacturing and lending and
Yeah.
professional services, security guard companies. So I've always been attracted to solving technology problems and just problems in challenging industries. So I got my start building businesses in commercial insurance, helped start a company doing commercial insurance technology. Then I went to logistics and finance for truckers. I went into HR services and data.
Kind of across the map a bit. What was sort of what was your sort of expertise in those ventures?
Operationally complex businesses. Yeah, operationally complex businesses, deep context required, workflows spanning multi parties. Logistics brokerages, you have the shipper, you have the carrier, you have the broker, you have the factorer. In
Right.
insurance, you have the brokerage, the carrier, the account managers. You have all of these, multi party transactions. And I'm just very attracted to those problems because it's about communication and coordination amongst a lot of different parties, all of whom who have an aligned interest to get something done,
Mm,
but they all have their own incentives at play. And what's required is really high quality communication, really great context gathering. And we didn't we didn't very intentionally land in property management. We were doing a very broad market search with an early AI product that we had built. It was an email product.
okay.
And
How long ago was this? Just set the tone a little bit of timeline.
yeah, so this was in April of last year.
Okay.
So we built this product around April of last year. We had some early users, and on May 28th of 2025, we reached out to who we thought was a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Turns out she was a property manager, and she was a user of this email product. And we had learned a little bit about how she was using and thinking about email in her business, and we realized that wow, she just gets a lot of email about maintenance issues.
Mm,
So we ended up driving to Sacramento. We had lunch with her, and over lunch, we realized it wasn't just email, it was all forms of communication. Her
mm.
phone kept ringing, she kept getting text messages, but every single time she got a communication, she silenced her phone. And she told us that I can't be in two places at once, and I want to enjoy my lunch with you guys.
Yeah. Wow. So you felt the pain like right there, and then what happened next? Did you start to just kind of process that and think about maybe who was on the other end of that text message and think about that experience, right? Because you know, that person wanted, I guess they probably cared about their property manager having, being able to sit down and have lunch. At the end of the day, they just want their thing done too, right?
For sure. And we just asked her, we're like, hey, who keeps calling you? She's like, it's tenants, it's vendors, it's someone on my team. They need an approval, and I'm in the middle of all this communication. I can't be in two places at once. But we knew that
Mm,
technology potentially could be in two places at once. So, we took her word for it, but we observed with our eyes that there was a problem here. She introduced us to a couple of management companies in Sacramento, California. We cold called them that day. We went to their offices. We met them and we learned about their problems. And that's what kicked off a journey of us effectively living in Sacramento for the months of June, July, and August
oh,
of
wow.
2025, where Mason was born, where we observed their problems. We worked alongside their teams to solve what they found was their hairiest problem.
And was that, you said we a few times, was that,
So this was Michael and I. Michael's our founding engineer. And it was just the two of us for a really long time
yeah.
in Sacramento before we started growing the team.
Okay. And so then you'd mentioned the NARPM event in Orlando.
Yeah.
So at that point, did you have a product put together and some customers using it, or, time? I mean, that's like, what was that, 8, 9 months ago?
Yeah. So I think the NARPM event in Orlando may have been October of
Yeah,
last
I
year.
think it was. Yeah, October,
Um,
November, yeah, that time frame.
yeah. So by that point, we had design customers, paying customers, probably, maybe maybe 1,000 doors worth of homes running on Mason for their maintenance.
Right.
And we went to Orlando just to, figure out, hey, are property managers across the nation feeling the same problem? At this point, we were only working with Sacramento-based property management
Oh
companies,
yeah, smart. So
and
you could kind of stay hands on with just one market, multiple property managers, start to understand kind of how consistent the problem is.
yeah, well, actually, more importantly, we could just be there. We could
Mm,
just be in their office, sitting with their teams, observing what happens like in the long pauses of work orders, or
right.
observing just what happens, when like you get off the screen. And so, we knew that companies in Sacramento had this problem, but we had also heard at this point that all property management is different, and that it was a game of exceptions. So we're like, okay, let's go to Orlando and let's figure out if this is a universal problem. And pretty quickly we realized that all of the problems that were facing the property managers we were working with in Sacramento were faced by property managers in Jacksonville, in Atlanta, in Indianapolis, in Oregon, in New Jersey. And so that was kind of it was kind of around then, which is when we decided to start really going for it and start scaling the product and making sure we started working with national companies.
Yeah, that's great background. Let's take a bit of a gear shift and kind of catch us up to today. What is Mason? What is the product? You've had quite a bit of time to um, build your team, because I've seen your team here, right? And really, really fun culture you're building there. What is Mason? What is it exactly that you're solving now?
Yeah, so Mason is an AI system that helps with maintenance orchestration. So your company will bring Mason on to handle your work orders from end to end. Mason will pick up the phone, triage your work orders, troubleshoot them, identify vendors, dispatch to vendors, follow up with vendors, process your invoices, close your books, pay your bills across the maintenance journey for both property managers who have an third party vendors, also importantly, property managers who have an in-house team. So more than half of our customers have in-house technicians where they need way more than they traditionally get with software. They need scheduling with the tenant. They need route planning. They need field services. They need inventory management. They need a whole host of services to generate revenue from their maintenance beyond just the basic coordination of third parties.
Let's put it in sort of the terms of like a situation. Like you've got a customer, they've got a maintenance request. The tenant submits that maintenance request. But you mentioned phone too, right? So you can intake via their online portal or wherever they submit maintenance. Is that through Mason's, like a Mason maintenance request portal, or does that sync up with whatever property management software that they're working with today?
Yeah, so Masons works wherever our customer works. So if the tenant submits work orders through their portal, Mason will pick up the work orders from that portal, send an outreach message to the tenant, usually via text message, and start communicating with the tenant that way. Let's say they have a phone system like almost all property managers do. We'll also get on the IVR. So
Mm,
press two for maintenance, we'll go to Mason, and Mason will handle that initial interaction and all subsequent communication on the work order itself.
okay. Yeah, that's very cool. And so they wouldn't have a maintenance phone number. Maybe they could.
Yeah, the maintenance phone number goes to Mason.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it would just route that way, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then it handles it end to end. So when does the human loop in,
hmm
if at all? Like, what are the edge cases right now where, I mean, you guys are early, there's got to be some friction, right? What's keeping you up right now in that flow? Because it is a big problem. That's not, critical. It's just the reality of, being pretty early.
Yeah, so we've designed the system to work in partnership with people. We do not pretend that Mason is going to replace your team. Instead, Mason operates on an approvals basis. So, what we've done is we've identified the high complexity, low time effort stages in the process. And that's what your team currently does with Mason. So,
Mm,
while Mason will do the intake, the troubleshooting, the initial vendor decision making, writing out what the vendor needs to do, drafting an owner message, Mason will then send that notification to the team, and the team can make a dispatch decision. There are many cases in which Mason will automatically dispatch emergencies in house where you exactly know what technician is going to go to the property, but some of the decision making around who we're going to send, what do we want to say to the owner, how much are we going to approve here, that's made by a person. The
yeah.
person then hands it back to Mason post dispatch, and Mason does the high effort, monotonous rote work of following up with the vendor, making sure it gets on the calendar, making sure the work actually gets done, making sure we have completion photos, potentially a review, an invoice, making sure the invoice is closed, the GL account is properly
Hmm.
mapped. Because, that's the high effort, low complexity work that's still bogging the team down,
Right.
but doesn't necessarily require as much context that a human has on the team.
Right. And so I guess in that process, does your system have the context to understand that client's history or like non-maintenance related? So like what levels of, integration, how do you think about integration and kind of syncing up with other systems? Because it sounds like this tool is sort of you guys are hyper specialized, locked in on maintenance.
Yeah.
It's obviously, I think anyone that's listening to this, I think Mason's generated quite a bit of buzz and people are excited about it. And I think that one nagging kind of elephant in the room question they have in their head is like, all right, how would this actually implement with our business?
Your own report said this, but a lot of management systems these days are getting progressively more and more open. Calling one out in particular is Rentvine. Rentvine has an open API. They firmly are in the camp of believing that the customer owns their own data, and they make it extremely easy and simple for third parties to interact with that data. For example, you can pull the historical work orders, understand if something is a service recall, understand the appliance history if you don't necessarily get the appliance information directly from the tenant at first pass. get details on it. Does this tenant have pets? What times are they available based off of historical work orders?
Right.
So all of this is context that we will gather. There's kind of a misconception that customers have to train AI agents. That's not exactly true. What actually customers need to do is they need to provide us with data access that allows us to study and integrate their historical decisions into what Mason's going to do in the future.
Yeah.
And then on a go forward basis, they then make decisions in terms of, hey, did we like this or did we not like it, in order to further refine it?
Well, let's dig in on the data side. So I think you make a good point, and I think that there's a lot of noise out there around that topic. And what I want to dig on specifically is the context, right? So you're a newer company, and maybe one could say, hey, you guys don't have as much data history, and you don't have as much data history. How are you going to be? How do you have the history to understand like how to actually solve for maintenance? And what you're suggesting is that may not really matter as much as people are saying it does.
Yeah. So there's the history of a company. So what is a company's maintenance history? That absolutely matters. Like what work has been done on the property? What are the details of the property? What are like the small nuances of the property? Is it on septic? How long of a snake might you need in order to clog a
Hmm.
mainline drain? There's all these small nuances of the property. That's absolutely important that we absolutely critically need to provide context to Mason, and that's where the integration
With like a
with the
rent vine.
management
Yeah.
system, a
Yeah.
rent fund, comes into play.
Or whatever system, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. Sorry, whatever
Yeah.
system.
No, that's,
Um,
we love, rent vine open data. It's great.
yeah. There's also a camp of people who believe, hey, we've got millions of work orders, and like that makes us more valuable. And what we have observed just in serving customers is that AI doesn't care about what you spent on maintenance 2 years ago.
Mm.
That has no relevance to what you're going to spend on
And is
maintenance
that like
today.
a context window type issue? Like if you're using like
No, it's not a context window issue. It's just
it's not
the
relevant
cost of
detail.
labor, the cost of materials,
When you're
probably the
determining the cost
vendors.
today, it matters what the market price is today. And it's,
Correct.
yeah.
The other thing is that so much of the intelligence relies upon the underlying AI models. A lot of folks are starting to use Claude, the Anthropic models. Opus 4.6, for example, Opus 4.7 now is one of the more powerful models. So much of the intelligence relies on that model. And then the harness is what we call it, which is guiding the model to make a decision. That what we have just observed is that the underlying data at an aggregate level isn't actually what drives a lot of the value for a property manager. What really drives the value for a property manager is how deeply integrated the AI is into your workflow.
Mm.
So, this is we've taken an approach where we're not going to do anything other than maintenance because we want to go progressively deeper and deeper into the workflow. People ask us for leasing, people ask us for other things, but we believe that the best AI systems are the ones that are going to go extremely deep, while tools like Anthropic go extremely horizontal. And it's that partnership that'll work for a customer.
Yeah, and so I'm curious to talk next, maybe a little bit about your pricing model. I've seen a lot of content out there about the impact of AI related to this concept of like service as a software. Like people just want work done, they want outcomes performed. You get a lot of the SaaS is dead hype, right? So I'm just curious how you think about your pricing. And maybe more generally, what do you say about SaaS is dead? Like
People
that
are,
headline. I mean, it's like you kind of see maybe it's just my Twitter algorithm. I don't know, but I
yeah,
see it out there.
people want problem solved. So I don't think problem solving is dead. Um,
Nice.
I think that, but more seriously, I think software that relies upon a human user is dead. Software that is built around a human user is dead.
Like elaborate on that a little bit. Like,
Um, a lot of software is built for a user to point and click in the tool, right? Where the intelligence and the decisions and the actions and the work that's being done is being done by a person. And the software is really like a really nice database that guides the individual through decisions. I
right,
think that's dead.
right. And you want a compelling interface, so it's intuitive which button to click to complete your work.
For sure.
Right.
And, and by the way, it's probably been dead for a really long time and we just didn't realize it.
Mm.
If you actually think about how much value has been generated by software in the property management industry over the last 20 years, It's not that much. The first revolution of software and property management came in the 1970s with Yardi. The second value wave of software was in the early 2000s with cloud native software with things like AppFolio. And over the last 20 years, not that much has changed.
Mm.
So I wouldn't say that there's been that much value created over the last 20 years. There have been, of course, improvements and great companies built. But what we're observing in this whole SaaS is dead narrative is that what's actually happening is we realize there's a new computing wave where there's an opportunity for software, for technology to do the work. And when technology can actually do the work, compared to scaffolding the work that was done previously, that's actually where you can add a lot of value.
And so when the work's done, let's go extreme. So let's say there isn't a login, there's no user interface, maintenance is just the work's being done. How does the owner or the team at the company, how do they access sort of the pulse of what's happening, what's not happening, KPIs, right? Yeah.
What's the interface?
Yeah. What's the interface? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So is it back to like the AppFolio, the Rentvine, the system of?
I don't think the management system is going anywhere. We have never advocated for, and don't think the management system is going anywhere. There will be different views. There will be different ways of observing the data, but I don't think the management system is going anywhere. Instead, I think a lot of the administrative work that was, necessary to, a lot of the administrative work that was necessary to power the weekly turns meeting, the weekly leasing meeting, the weekly work order review, quarterly spend analysis, the owner NOI report, all of those things, all of the work that went into that is now being automated, but the interface where you review the health of your owners is still going to exist.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I want to shift gears a bit into the data side of things. I definitely want to talk about a bit about like where you see the future heading, but I think let's take a pause and kind of talk a little bit about the data. Because I think you and I really connected well early when we shared with you our plan to launch the Vendor Performance Index. And for those of you that first time hearing about it, so basically propertymanager.com, we want to surface the best property management companies and really allow them to differentiate, kind of like that Carfax of property management idea. And we realized that when you ask a property manager's clients, hey, what's your experience with that property manager? It's a really good way to determine, like, is this property manager doing a good job or not? But we had sort of this light bulb aha moment because we realized, well, wait a second. We know all of the tech stack and the tools and the resources that the property manager is using. Do those tools and resources attribute to the outcomes like maintenance response time or communication or reporting, right? And so going through that process, like I shared that vision with you, you were like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we want to participate. Like we're early, but we're transparent, right? And so we didn't have, you're early, you didn't have a ton of customers. You couldn't just bolt it out to 1,000 customers, but the customers who did respond, perfect NPS. So far, everyone, highly would recommend you. Performance above industry average of 92. I mean, you're the number 6 overall rated company, even with a limited amount of responses. So, I mean, how do you think about, transparency and, performance being surfaced kind of in this new AI agent kind of future?
Well, by the way, I hope that like we have more of our customers respond to your surveys because I think we could probably go up that leaderboard just based off of the sort of feedback that we're getting from folks. So your question is, how do we think about transparency of outcomes?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like, I think data is a really hot topic around like really a lot of things. And a lot of people kind of consider that data sort of the fuel for AI and AI search and structured data. So like our customers really think about data as a way to like surface it on their profile so they can sort of stand out. And, similarly, it's like there's going to be all these new companies and ideas and concepts, and like property managers are going to be more overwhelmed than ever. How does Mason think about, really those data and outcomes as something that, you guys hold your team accountable to, make sure you've got a pulse on that customer satisfaction?
Yeah. Maybe I have a slightly different opinion here, which is that I think data often is an exhaust of an experience and value that you are delivering. It's like a lagging indicator of the work that you have done. So the standard we hold ourselves to actually, mostly has to do with like, let's read the work orders. Let's like look at the work being done
Right.
and see, are we delivering tenants a great experience?
Like Sacramento for you guys.
For sure. Yeah. Or just like, I mean, by the way, we still have a on-call rotation, which is when people call the emergency line, someone at our team knows about it, whether it's 2 a.m., 5 a.m. We review the traces, we understand what Mason is saying. And by the way, this is across tens of thousands of work orders.
Right.
We take an unbelievably very, very fine tooth comb to everything Mason is doing because that's actually the level of care you need in order to get the outcomes we want. So I think one, like the way that the standard we hold ourselves to is let's just actually read everything and review everything that our system is doing. And then of course, we obviously are tracking things like, how quickly are vendors getting dispatched? What's the first time fix rate, which is, I think an under discussed metric in the maintenance space.
Yeah, elaborate on that rate or that metric a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just what percentage of work orders get fixed on the very first time that a vendor is dispatched to that work,
That
to that
really
site.
correlates to accuracy of triage to vendor selection.
For sure. It correlates to how much information did you get up front? Were you able to get enough information such that the vendor was able to go out to the property with this right materials? Do you send the right vendor? It's just a question
Well,
of
and
efficiency.
honestly, if that number was like normalized across all maintenance platforms, which is super interesting to me, how I think about data, but that that sort of answers the question of that's kind of the mic drop moment of what we talked about earlier with like AI data context,
Mm.
because who cares about that if like that's sort of the scorecard that matters is if you're able to get it right, then clearly you had enough context.
Yeah, I mean, there's first times fix rate, there's time to dispatch, there is utilization of the in-house team, there's time to resolve. So I think there's a lot of other
Yeah.
metrics that matter here, but
What about like the pricing side of it? The what does this cost and speed? It's like the balance of like we want it done quickly. That keeps the tenant happy. That usually mitigates issues if they could, like a leak can get worse and damage and all that, right? But also cost is that's like the number you communicate to the owner. They get on the reporting statement, right?
yeah, average work order cost absolutely matters, but it also shrouds a number of potential problems that exist higher up earlier in the process,
Mm.
which is why we talk about things like first time fix rate. If you have an extremely high first time fix rate, your average work order cost is going to go down. So we absolutely care about average work order cost, but sometimes when taken in the aggregate, it's actually not useful information. This is the same thing when it comes to like tenant satisfaction on work order resolution. For all of you out there who have maybe a survey that goes out after your work orders, my guess is your average tenant satisfaction is 4.1. Every single company we have ever looked at who has tenant satisfaction of maintenance work requests has a 4.1 score. It just normalizes to roughly that.
Yeah.
And it ends up just kind of like average work order cost. It shrouds what's actually happening higher up in the funnel.
Well, what about some of the other sort of like data layers, right? So someone like an owner might get upset. And this is the experience of a property manager, right? Through their lens, like the property manager, the owner, depending on who's having that conversation with the client, that client might get an email about a work order and start to get, really shitty and upset about the price. Are you kidding me? This is $800. This is insane. Like I'm not paying for this. You guys get another quote. They're upset. Like it's also, they might not be upset about the price. We see that in our survey data. What we think happens in a lot of cases is they're actually upset about the vacancy 90 days ago.
Right.
And they might be upset about the fact that this has been a recurring issue that they
Right.
thought was done 2 years ago. How does Mason today have like consider any of that like information, or is it more just through the maintenance lens?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things. One is,
And does any of that matter? What I just said, you're the expert, right? You're kind of in it every day.
well, maybe I can tell you what our customers care about. I don't pretend to be the expert. I just am, telling you what our customers care about. When it comes to maintenance spend, they want to make sure that if they are solving a problem, they are not solving a problem created by a vendor. So, if there's a leak under the kitchen sink, we sure as heck hope that this was not caused by the garbage disposal that was installed 2 days ago. And if it was, we absolutely have to send that vendor back to the property because their work was under service recall. The same thing happens when it comes to work orders done at turnover, which is if we paid, a turn vendor, or if we, sent one of our guys out to get a home turn ready, and within the first 10 days, we get a slew of work orders. we need to make sure that we did not miss something in our process, in our turn process, to make sure that this home was make
Right.
ready. So I think the things that matter is, you absolutely have to build historical context on the work that was done on the property. In terms of the whether the owner gets upset about, one spend because there was a vacancy or not. I think this is actually one of the arts of property management, which is why we think property managers are still going to be involved in the transaction, which is they know their owners, they have full context on the leasing decisions, on the maintenance decisions, et cetera, and they're going to navigate that conversation with the owner. But what we can do is make sure that no steps are skipped in the maintenance process, and we're delivering the highest value of maintenance experience to that owner on any given work order.
Yeah, it's very thoughtful. Well, I like to ask some more difficult questions, and I think this is one that's been top of mind for a lot of property managers, which is really around kind of people dancing around the answer here a bit. And I think I don't think people are like dodging this question, but it's also because they just don't know. But it's this industry has been fragmented, but also standardized. It was perfectly right for remote team members and virtual assistants. A lot of companies have numerous team members running these processes, right? And so they hear of like the AI company, which I think you've done a really great job communicating. It's like there's a lot of human, real people that matter that are like solving big, complex problems, but it's like the AI company coming in and disrupting are we gonna have to fire people? And I think I've heard two answers. It's like, all right, we're gonna enhance what your current team members can do. And then there's the other side that's like, no, absolutely. Like people are gonna lose jobs, right? And
Yeah.
so it's not just Mason, right? But there's a lot of leasing. It's almost every category this is happening. But how do you see that playing out in the space?
Yeah. Our most successful customers they are utilizing their existing teammates to do on-site work because Mason is removing administrative burden from their plate.
Mm.
So if they have a team of maintenance coordinators in person, they're able to send those coordinators to do more inspections. They're able to, actually physically go to the property at a level and at a cadence that they previously weren't able to do.
Which is driving real P&L impact for
For
them.
sure. Yeah. That's how they build a real value added relationship with owners of properties is by going to the physical property, seeing it and making sure that they understand what's going on. I don't think that we're going to see the same penetration of virtual assistants in the property management industry in 5 years that we see today. We're not. A lot of people moved over to virtual assistants, I think primarily from a cost basis
Definitely.
because, it was just 3x cheaper to hire internationally than it was to hire domestically. Apart from, the top 20 or so percentage of operators, most operators we meet are struggling with consistency, struggling with things with the remote team members. It's just a context challenge. And just kind of with any individual, every time you have turnover of a team, you are retraining individuals. So I definitely think we're going to see a lower penetration of remote team members in the next 5 years that we do today. But I also think that, by the way, that property management companies are probably going to staff up their field teams, right? They're going to have more inspectors on staff. They're going to have more PMs, perhaps, who are actually able to go visit properties, build relationships with owners, et cetera. And one of the trends that we're observing is more property managers are in-housing maintenance. They're taking control of the maintenance
Mm.
experience and taking the headcount that they may have spent on administrative functions and spending it on a new function, which is maintenance.
Yeah, I align a lot, really well with that. I think the data we see, it's sort of like the escape velocity happens for a company in terms of like growth once they're like 780, 800, like kind of that zone.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those constraints are really built around the kind of like a lot of people to manage a lot of processes. And so it's like, empower some of the property managers to do more, bring some stuff in house. Now there's more, money hitting the bottom line, more resources. I think it's an exciting time. There's going to be some tough decisions but it's at the end of the day, I think it's going to be an enhancement. It's going to be a lot of excitement. Any other final thoughts before we transition to the, Dylan's famous lightning round that he has coined. So any other things top of mind for you that you want to share?
I think it is an exciting time. I think that, there are a lot of ways that management companies can improve their operations today. Generally, my take that I'm sharing with people is you don't have to rush into anything right now. This might sound like counterintuitive for, a vendor or a software
A
company
startup trying to, grow,
trying to
but
trying to slow people down. One of your assets as a property management company is you have annual PMAs. You have management agreements that ultimately People aren't going to run away from you if you don't adopt the latest AI vendor today. There are problems to be solved. You should do your diligence. You should stay close to the edge of what's possible, but you should not be too reactive to AI. You
Right.
should understand what's going on, identify the problems in your business, and then seek solutions to those problems.
Yeah, that's an incredible point. I mean, anybody that's been to a big conference for the first time, I feel like it's an overwhelmed, like 15, 20 different things you want to do.
Mhm.
And you can't do them all. You get overwhelmed and you don't do many of them, or you try to do too many and none of them well. There's an abundance of new things that can be implemented. And so I think that's a great perspective of kind of slow down. Why are you making a decision? Like, what is it you're actually solving for?
Right.
So, all right, lightning round. You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm just going to say this. I will always prep my guest for the lightning round because it's like we want them to have thoughtful responses. But Nathan said, you know what? Don't prep me. I'm just gonna. So this is gonna be really cool to see.
Just to be clear, it wasn't because I didn't want to give a thoughtful response, but I just wanted to make sure it was genuine.
Yeah, no, this is. I love the authenticity. I think it's just a great reflection of like your character, your team's character around authenticity and transparency. So, all right, what is the tool or the app that's not work related that you would recommend for an operator? Just something that you've enjoyed,
But that's not work related.
not work related. It can be kind of like a little overlap, but like an example. Now you can't say it, but an example would be Claude.
Hmm.
I use it for work. Obviously, you do as well.
Yeah.
But like you also can ask it personal things. But so you can't say that now, but that's an example.
I use something called Granola. I use it for both work, but I also use it for my personal life. Specifically, anytime I'm
I
talking
said an
to,
app, not food.
oh yeah, so Granola
Just kidding.
is an app. It's on your phone. It's on your computer. Anytime you talk to someone, you can let them know that Granola is on, and it takes notes for you. But it does a lot more than that. It can organize all of your notes. I have something for my health. I have something for my finances. I have something for my insurance. Anytime I'm talking to a doctor, I have it running. And it's extremely powerful, just capturing a lot of context, a lot of information about my life that then I put into Claude, and I am able to make better decisions about my life.
Love it. That's great. All right. Next question. What is the book or podcast you would recommend for an operator to check out?
I love Jay Parsons. He has a podcast called The Rent Roll. It is a little bit multifamily and built around single family oriented, but he has just some absolutely amazing market analysis of what's going on in the general housing landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from the like what's going on with rents, what's going on with vacancies, and also ultimately I know that what he is saying is a leading indicator for what's going on in the single family space. So I would highly recommend The Rent Roll by Jay Parsons. I'm going to say one more because
Yeah,
I think
go
they're
for it.
very, very good. There's a blog and a Substack called SFR Analysis. For anyone who's looking for market insights of what's going on in the single family rental space, I would strongly recommend a subscription.
What is one word you would use to describe the maintenance category in terms of the lens of the future of property management? What's the one word that's most important for the future of the maintenance category?
Critical. This is
Critical.
the most critical function in the future of property management, I believe. I don't think that our belief is that there is limited alpha to differentiate value across many other categories. In leasing, you should have a great leasing process, but you are ultimately limited in what you can do and how you can, bring creativity to your leasing operations. In rent
Less
collection,
control there too, right? Yeah.
in rent collection and delinquencies, you are capped at 100% of rent. You cannot necessarily bring creativity to how you collect your rent. There is a process, you follow the process. In maintenance, I believe that there's a lot of upside. You can do a lot of things to improve outcomes for yourself as a business owner, but also for your customers when it comes to maintenance. So I think it's critical.
That's great. For having no preparation, that was an exceptional response.
Thank you.
Well, Nathan, it's been great, man. This has been fun. We've got another podcast coming up, and I wish we could talk more. We're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And yeah, really excited to do it again.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of the time, broker owner.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.